Good morning, everyone. Please God, this will be the last day. I know I say this every day when I'm on the move, on the go, but let me share with you an incredible idea which really made an impression on me. But firstly, today's learning, as every day, is dedicated in memory of all of those whose yortzites coincide with today. We wish the families long life, as well as wishing long life to all those that are saying Kaddish, and the learning is dedicated to their loved ones. So let me share with you an idea, and then we'll hopefully share with you a little story that goes with it. So the idea comes from this week's Torah portion, and the idea is the far-reaching effect of little acts. You know, we live in a world where it's all about, the public persona, the PR machine, the marketing, the image, the amount of likes that we get and friends that we have on social media. It's really the antithesis of so much of what Judaism stands for. And there is an idea in this week's Torah portion which really puts things in perspective. Firstly, let me just say good morning to Clarice, Michael, Mervyn, David, Carol, and Andy. Good morning to each and every one of you. And the idea is as follows. Abraham had a nephew, we spoke about him yesterday, called Lot. And they parted company. Lot needed more more land, more green pasture for his flock. And therefore, rather than have a disagreement, Abraham says, choose whichever side you want. I will go the other direction, and therefore we'll have shalom, we'll have peace between us. So they go their separate ways. Now, eventually, there was a battle between the 4 kings and the 5 kings, and lo and behold, Lot, Abraham's nephew, gets captured. And Abraham, how does he hear about it? There was no WhatsApp in those days, and basically, an escapee from the war manages to make his way to Abraham and tells him, you got to go and save your nephew's life. He's being captured. So Abraham, of course, comes to the rescue, and he saves Lot's life. Now, who was that messenger, that escapee? And the answer is that it was Og. Og is a very fascinating character, a giant. He was one of the giants of the world who actually survived we have a tradition that he survived the flood. How did he survive the flood? He wasn't in the ark. He was a giant who held on to the ark and managed to stay afloat. Incredible medrash that says that. Anyways, so fast forward many years, Og becomes a king in his own right, king of Bashan, and Abraham is now going to fight against Og, and basically Abraham is afraid because maybe Og is more righteous or has more merit to his credit, and therefore Abraham will not win the battle. And everyone's perplexed and baffled. We're dealing with Abraham, the first Jew, founder of monotheism, the most righteous person in the world. Why would he be concerned that this Og, this giant, has more merit than an Abraham? And the answer is that Abraham remembered back to the previous incident that he mentioned. He remembered the fact that Og had had been a messenger to come, escape the battle, risk his life to tell Abraham that Lot was in need of his assistance. And that, of course, would be a merit which would stand him in good stead. And the commentaries point out what is astounding, Estelle, good morning, and Rachel, good morning, was the fact that we're dealing with somebody who had the ulterior motives. He was now altruistic, Og. He was selfish. He wanted, apparently, he had designs on Sarah, Abraham's wife, and therefore he thought he would be able to dispatch to deal with Abraham by sending him to the battle. He'd be killed in battle, and therefore Sarah would remain for Og to take as his wife. So what's fascinating, friends, is here we have a character, Og, right? This giant who had the worst of ulterior motives. He was absolutely in it for himself, and yet Abraham still had to worry and had to be reassured by God that he would win the battle against Og, despite the fact that you were dealing with somebody who was a car salesman, somebody very dodgy, somebody very somebody with the wrong intentions and motives, but nonetheless he did a small act which had a profound impact, right? His act saved Lot's life, and Abraham was able to come to the rescue. Now let me share with you a story. I'm sure you all have heard not this story but very similar stories. This story is well corroborated. There's plenty of evidence. So we go back to the Second World War, and I think it was in Warsaw, and yes, they were sending the Jewish people, I think it was 1942, around then, they were sending the Jewish people to work camps. Now, obviously, a man and a woman can just about go to work. We're not talking about normal work, we're talking about like slave labor. But children had no chance of survival. They were killed, okay? Or worse. So therefore, the Hiller family, they realized they had a problem. They had a young son, and they were deeply concerned. What were they going to do in a matter of a couple of days? The Nazis were going to march in and send them to a labor camp, and they would not be able to keep their son. So Mrs. Hiller remembered that she had a friend, Mrs. Yanklevich. The Yankleviches were not Jewish, but they were old friends and neighbors of the Hillers. Now the Yankleviches didn't have any children of their own. She approached Mrs. Yanklevich, and she agreed. This non-Jewish Polish woman agreed to take in their son as their own for the duration of the war. And Mrs. Hiller made a deal with Mrs. Yanklevich. She said, I'm giving you my Jewish son to save his life, to protect him for the duration of the war, right? But I'm giving you, I want him, obviously, we expect him back after the war. But if I don't make it back and I get killed, right, here are 2 letters of family in Montreal and family in Washington, D.C. And I want you to promise to me that if I don't make it out, you will make sure that this child ends up with with my Jewish family. I don't want him, obviously being a Jewish child, to remain brought up in a Christian, by a Catholic family. So anyways, Mrs. Yanklevich agreed, and the Hillers went to the work camp, and Nebuch, they were killed. They were killed. They never made it back. So Mrs. Yanklevich, of course, became very attached to this young boy, and in fact, she was a religious woman, she took him to mass every week, and the child became very attached to the Yankleviches. Now, after the war, 1946, the boy was, I think, 11 years old, and the Mrs. Yanklevich decided that there was no way this family, the Hillers, were coming back. She would keep him as her own, and she took him to the priest for baptism. And when the priest saw a 11-year-old boy who had come for baptism, he became suspicious, and he said to Mrs. Yanklevich, why is it you're bringing a 10-year-old boy for baptism? Usually we baptize a baby. What's the story? And Mrs. Yanklevich broke down, and she told the story about how she had taken in this child, a Jewish child, and brought him up as her own. But the family had gone. And the priest told her that in view of the fact that this woman had clearly left instructions of family, which were in Washington and in Montreal, she had a duty to give that child, to do everything she can to return that child to the family, to the family, extended family. And that is precisely what she did. And if we fast forward, the child grew up, was brought up by his extended family, became a frum Jewish man, very successful, vice president of a large company. And in fact, the priest went on in 1978, became no less than Pope John Paul II. And when the Blücher Rebbe, one of the Rebbes, Hasidic masters in America, heard this story many years later. He said, listeners, listen, and then you'll realize the connection to what we said earlier. He said, who knows if that small act by that priest was the merit which the Almighty saw, in which he was worthy, seen as worthy to become the Pope. And we don't know. We can never work out and figure out the designs and the plans of God Almighty. You know, man tracht and God lacht. You know, man plans and God laughs. Very often, what we think is one way is the other way. But we can see the value. Little actions, little deeds can have a ripple effect across the course of humanity and civilization. So therefore, it's the little things in life rather than the bigger things which can have a profound impact on those, on ourselves and those around us. Wishing everyone well. Have a great day. Keep safe, keep well. Please God, tomorrow I look forward to being back with you at my desk. Keep well. All the best.